June the 2nd, 1944. A cold fog rolls over the English countryside, blurring the horizon into shades of grey. From above, the scene looks unstoppable, a sprawling invasion force stretching for miles. Hundreds of tanks lined in perfect formation. Rows of trucks, landing craft gathered like silent beasts waiting for the order to strike. To the eye of the German reconnaissance pilot circling high above, it is unmistakable. The Allies are preparing to invade. He snaps his photographs and radios the coordinates back to Berlin, but what those cameras capture isn't real. The tanks are made of rubber, the planes of wood and canvas, the soldiers nothing more than mannequins and shadows. Every gun barrel, every tent, every radio signal, a carefully crafted illusion. An army that doesn't exist, built to fool one of the most powerful war machines in history. In a war defined by fire and blood, the Allies are about to unleash a different kind of weapon, one made of paint, air and imagination. This is not the story of men charging into battle, but of artists, engineers and magicians who fought with deception. Their mission? To make Hitler believe a lie so big, he'd move his armies in the wrong direction. A war of shadows is about to begin, and its ghosts will change the course of history. By early 1944, the world was bleeding. Europe lay under the shadow of a swastika, and Hitler's armies stretched from the beaches of France to the heart of Poland. The Allies knew that if they were ever to take the continent back, they would have to strike hard, fast, and in one precise place. That moment would come to be known as D-Day, the largest amphibious invasion in history. But before a single boot could touch French soil, one terrifying truth loomed. If the Germans guessed where the attack would land, it would all be over before it began. Hitler's intelligence network was vast. His spies were everywhere. German radar scanned the English coast day and night, searching for signs of the invasion force they knew was coming. Every whisper, every movement, every convoy that crossed the countryside risked giving away the Allies' most dangerous secret, where the invasion would begin. Normandy was the real target, but to send hundreds of thousands of soldiers across the Channel, the Allies needed more than strength. They needed secrecy, and secrecy by itself wouldn't be enough. They needed to make Hitler believe a lie. Thus was born Operation Bodyguard, a deception plan so audacious that even the generals doubted it could work. Its purpose was simple: mislead the Germans into thinking the Allies would attack anywhere but Normandy. Yet beneath this grand strategy was a smaller, more intricate web, a plan within a plan, known as Operation Fortitude. Its task, to invent a completely fake army, one that existed only in photographs, radio signals, and reports from double agents. The stakes were impossible. The Allies were betting the entire fate of the war on illusion. A single slip, a shadow cast wrong, a tank seen deflating in the sun, a message intercepted out of place, and the Germans would know. They would turn their artillery, their panzer divisions, their full might toward Normandy. And the beaches that history remembers as D-Day would have become a graveyard. In secret rooms, lit by flickering lamps, Allied strategists debated how to deceive one of the most paranoid minds on Earth. Hitler trusted almost no one. He believed in signs, in symbols, in omens, and in his own instincts. But he also believed something else, that the most logical invasion point for the Allies was Pas-de-Calais, the narrowest point between Britain and France. It was here, the Germans thought, that the Allies could strike fastest, supply easiest and win quickest, and so the Allies decided to give him exactly what he wanted to see. The plan was diabolical in its simplicity: create a phantom army across the English coast, opposite Calais, and fill it with everything that would convince German eyes it was real. Fake airfields, dummy tanks, wooden landing craft, entire radio networks mimicking the chatter of thousands of soldiers. Even a commanding general, the infamous George S. Patton, the man Hitler considered his greatest rival, every detail had to be flawless. The Germans would be watching from the skies, listening through the ether, studying every scrap of evidence they could find. And so painters, carpenters, radio operators, and intelligence officers began to work hand in hand, not to fight a battle of bullets, but a battle of belief. The deception would become a masterpiece of psychological warfare, where shadows and whispers were as deadly as bombs. And as the real invasion fleet prepared for Normandy, the phantom army took shape under canvas and smoke, waiting to play its part in the greatest trick of the Second World War. But no one yet knew if it would work. Because in the eyes of history's most suspicious dictator, one false move could expose everything. And if Hitler saw through the illusion, the cost wouldn't be measured in lies. It would be measured in lives. They came from art schools, film studios, and design workshops, not from the trenches. Men who once painted billboards, built movie sets, and studied architecture now found themselves recruited into one of the strangest and most secretive units of the entire war. The army called them engineers, but among themselves they went by another name, the Ghost Army. Their mission was unlike any other. They were not trained to kill, but to deceive, to create illusions so real that even the enemy would believe them. They would fight not with guns, but with imagination. To them, war was not just a battlefield. It was a stage. When they arrived at their secret base in southern England, many of these recruits could hardly believe what they were seeing. Giant rubber tanks stacked like balloons, wooden aircraft being rolled out onto fake runways, trucks carrying loudspeakers the size of small cars. It looked absurd until they realized what it was for. Each inflatable tank, each painted vehicle, each echoing sound effect was a weapon in the fight to fool the Nazis. From the outside, it seemed like theater, but the stakes could not have been higher. If a German reconnaissance pilot flew overhead, every shadow had to be perfect, every illusion flawless. If they noticed a seam out of place, a shadow at the wrong angle, the entire deception could collapse. And with it, the hopes of D-Day itself. These artists became masters of illusion. Painters learned to study the sunlight, how it hit the curved steel of a real tank, how it cast shadows across the grass. Then they recreated it with brushes and tarps, painting light where there was none, darkness where there should be depth. Engineers designed tanks that could be inflated in 30 minutes, yet looked heavy enough to crush concrete. From a mile away, they were indistinguishable from the real thing. Sound experts joined the operation, armed with the newest technology from Hollywood. They traveled with trucks carrying powerful amplifiers, playing carefully mixed recordings of marching troops, clanking metal, and roaring engines. Late at night, across the English countryside, their sounds echoed, and German intelligence reported entire divisions where none existed. Radio operators added another layer to the illusion. They built a fake communication network, transmitting constant coded chatter between units of the imaginary army. The Germans, listening carefully, picked up every word. To them, the transmissions were undeniable proof that a massive Allied force was forming near Pas-de-Calais. Every man in the Ghost Army knew the risk. If even one German agent discovered what they were doing, they'd be captured or executed on the spot. Their work depended on secrecy and precision, so they became perfectionists. At night, they rehearsed the placement of their decoys like stagehands before a performance. During the day, they moved entire battalions of rubber tanks under camouflage nets, ensuring they were visible only from the angles German planes would approach. The airfields were perhaps the most breathtaking illusions of all. Wooden planes were rolled into position. Oil stains were painted beneath them to mimic the marks left by real engines. Mechanics in fake uniforms wandered the sites, pretending to work. From the sky, the photographs looked flawless, indistinguishable from real air bases teeming with life. Even Allied pilots, returning from missions, sometimes mistook these wooden birds for their own squadrons. Behind the scenes, humor and fear mixed in strange ways. Soldiers joked as they inflated tanks with air pumps, calling them the world's biggest balloons. But when they heard the low drone of a German reconnaissance aircraft overhead, laughter stopped instantly. Everyone froze. The smallest movement could give them away. One mistake, one burst of curiosity, and the enemy would know that the mighty army they saw was nothing but smoke and canvas. Yet the ghost army never faltered. They understood that their lies were saving real lives. Every fake tank they built, every decoy they moved, every sound they played, it all bought the Allies time. Time to prepare for the real invasion. Time to mislead Hitler's spies. Time to turn fiction into a weapon. By the spring of 1944, their phantom army stretched across miles of English coastline. Entire divisions that didn't exist were stationed there. Tens of thousands of invisible men waiting for an invasion that would never come. It was a masterpiece of deception, crafted by artists who had turned creativity into a weapon of war. But the true test of their illusion was still ahead. Soon, their creation would face the sharpest eyes in the world, German intelligence, high command, and Hitler himself. And if their deception failed, no art or sound could save them. Because when the curtain finally rose on D-Day, the world would see whether the Ghost Army's performance would fool the greatest villain in history, or bring the Allies' grand illusion crashing down. Spring, 1944. The English countryside pulsed with quiet anticipation. Along the southern coast, a phantom army came to life, a force so vast that it seemed impossible to conceal. But concealment was never the goal. This army was meant to be seen. Its name was the 1st U.S. Army Group, or FUSAG, and its commander, at least on paper, was one of the most feared men in Hitler's mind, General George S. Patton. To the Germans, Patton was the embodiment of American aggression, the iron-willed general who struck hard, fast, and without mercy. If Patton commanded an army, the enemy believed, it would not sit idle. And that was precisely the illusion the Allies wanted to sell. Across the Kent countryside, an entire world of deception unfolded. Giant inflatable Sherman tanks filled the open fields, their rubber hulls glinting under the grey British sun. Wooden aircraft sat lined on fake airstrips, while dummy landing craft were arranged along the coast of Dover, each one a silent promise of invasion. Even the tire tracks leading to these ghost vehicles were carefully pressed into the mud, matching the weight and spacing of real military convoys. But visual deception was only part of the act. The illusion needed life, sound, motion, and noise. Trucks fitted with enormous loudspeakers roamed the countryside, blasting pre-recorded sounds of engine roars, boots marching, and the clatter of machinery. To anyone listening, the air was alive with the rhythm of a military build-up. At night, the deception deepened. Flares lit up the coastline, mimicking the glow of campfires and activity. Fake supply depots appeared overnight, stacked with crates marked ammunition and rations. Drivers moved in precise loops to simulate convoy routes, the same trucks circling through different villages to create the illusion of thousands. Even the radio operators played their part, transmitting endless streams of coded chatter. Every message was designed to be intercepted by German intelligence. Every signal was bait, and the Germans took it. In Berlin, analysts pored over the flood of information pouring in from across the Channel. Aerial reconnaissance photographs confirmed the presence of armoured divisions in Kent. Double agents in Britain reported that General Patton was commanding forces preparing for an assault on Pas-de-Calais. To the Germans, the pieces fit perfectly. Every scrap of intelligence reinforced the same conclusion: the Allied invasion would come at Calais. One of the most crucial players in this intricate game of lies was a Spanish double agent named Juan Pujol, codenamed Garbo. To the Germans, he was one of their most trusted spies. In truth, he worked for the British. Garbo crafted an entire web of imaginary sub-agents, 30 men and women who didn't exist, feeding the Abwehr, Germany's military intelligence, a constant stream of convincing false reports. His fabricated network described troop movements, supply shipments, and coded updates about the supposed Calais invasion. The Germans, unable to verify the details, believed him completely. As Operation Fortitude unfolded, the deception grew to unimaginable proportions. The Germans began shifting their defenses north, reinforcing the Pas-de-Calais region with more troops, tanks, and coastal artillery. They left Normandy lightly guarded, exactly as the Allies had hoped, but for those orchestrating the illusion, the tension was unbearable. They knew that one careless mistake, a wrong shadow, a deflated tank, a signal out of sync, could unravel the entire deception. Allied pilots flying reconnaissance missions were warned to avoid certain sectors so they wouldn't accidentally photograph the fake camps and expose the ruse. Even among Allied soldiers, only a handful knew the truth. Most believed Fusag was real. Patton himself played his role to perfection. Publicly disgraced after slapping a soldier in Sicily, he had been sidelined, or so the world thought. But now he appeared in southeastern England, inspecting his troops, making speeches, and appearing in public at just the right moments. German spies noted his presence and reported it immediately. To them, it confirmed everything. Patton was preparing to lead the decisive blow across the shortest route to France. From the skies above, German reconnaissance planes captured images of the mighty invasion force assembling along the coast. The photos showed hundreds of landing craft and tanks. The reports went straight to Hitler's desk. He was convinced, even after the real invasion landed in Normandy on June 6th, Hitler refused to believe it was genuine. He called it a diversion, a trap meant to pull his forces away from the real invasion that would strike Calais. For nearly 2 months after D-Day, he held his panzer divisions in reserve, waiting for Patton's phantom army to attack. Every day he waited, thousands of Allied troops pushed further inland. Every hour his tanks sat idle, the deception deepened its impact. The Ghost Army had done more than build a mirage. They had manipulated the enemy's mind. As the spring turned to summer, the air buzzed with anticipation. The world's most dangerous bluff was working. But the men behind it knew one cruel truth. The longer their illusion held, the greater the risk of exposure, because if the Germans ever discovered that the mighty 1st U.S. Army Group was made of rubber and wood, then every life that Operation Fortitude had saved could be lost in an instant. June 6, 1944. Dawn breaks over the English Channel, its grey waters churning beneath the weight of history. The largest invasion in human history has begun. Allied ships stretch from horizon to horizon, and the thunder of artillery shatters the silence of the French coast. Thousands of men step into the surf of Normandy, young, terrified, determined. It is D-Day, but far to the north, along the coast opposite Pas-de-Calais, a different kind of battle is taking place. Here, the men of the Ghost Army stand in silence, watching the skies, knowing that the fate of those real soldiers across the Channel may depend entirely on whether their illusion still holds. The fake army, the 1st U.S. Army Group, is now in full operation. Inflatable tanks gleam under the morning sun, their canvas skin rippling in the breeze. Fake airfields hum with artificial life. Radio operators send endless streams of messages, their voices calm, deliberate, rehearsed, a theater of war running on pure imagination. Sound crews blast the noise of truck engines, troop movements, and metal clanking through massive loudspeakers. To anyone listening from afar, it sounds like a vast army mobilizing for attack, but for the men maintaining this illusion, there's no triumph, no cheering, only tension. They know that right now, on the beaches of Normandy, their comrades are dying, and that every second their ruse holds, more of them might live. In Berlin, Hitler receives reports from his intelligence officers. The invasion has begun, they say, but it looks small, scattered, chaotic. The Führer is unconvinced. This is not the main assault, he insists. It's a diversion. His generals nod. They agree. The real invasion, they are certain, will strike at Calais, led by General Patton and his mighty 1st Army Group. They keep their panzer divisions in reserve, waiting for the attack that will never come. The deception is working. In Normandy, the Allies face a nightmare. The beaches are fortified, the machine guns relentless, the losses staggering. Every reinforcement matters. Every delay in the German counterattack means one more chance for the Allies to push forward. And that delay, that precious, Life-saving pause comes from the ghosts. For days after the invasion begins, the Ghost Army maintains its performance. Trucks move back and forth in carefully planned circuits, leaving fresh tire marks in the dirt for German reconnaissance to photograph. Sound engineers tweak the recordings, making them louder, more convincing, as if reinforcements are arriving for Patton's phantom troops. Fake radio messages describe entire battalions awaiting orders to cross at Calais. The Germans intercept every one of them and believe from the air the illusion remains perfect. Reconnaissance planes capture images of tanks neatly aligned in fields, fake supply dumps stacked high with empty crates, and ships that shimmer along the shore like a gathering storm. Analysts in Berlin spread the photos across their tables, convinced the Allies are preparing for a second, larger invasion. Meanwhile, the Ghost Army soldiers live in a world of silence and secrecy. They can't tell anyone what they're doing. Not even the real troops who think they're guarding an active division. They sleep in tents beside rubber tanks, eat rations by the light of fake campfires, and listen to the distant thunder of real war across the Channel. Many feel the weight of guilt pressing on them. They are safe while others bleed for the same victory. But they know their lie is saving thousands. As days turn to weeks, Hitler's obsession with Calais deepens. He refuses to release his armored divisions to Normandy. Even when the Allies capture the port of Cherbourg, even when they push inland through the hedgerows of France, he holds firm. The main invasion has not yet begun, he declares. Calais is the key. Incredibly, for nearly 7 weeks, the deception continues. The Ghost Army feeds false intelligence, maintains their fake positions, and sustains the illusion that a massive force stands ready to strike. Each day, the ruse buys more time and more lives. Finally, as Allied troops break through the German lines and begin their march toward Paris, the truth starts to dawn on the enemy. The mighty army in Kent never moves. The invasion at Calais never comes. One by one, the pieces unravel. For the Ghost Army, there is no victory parade, no medals, no songs. They quietly deflate their tanks, pack up their wooden aircraft, and move on to their next secret mission. Still sworn to silence, but in those crucial weeks after D-Day, when the future of Europe hung by a thread, their illusion turned the tide. Their fake army, made of air, paint, and sound, had held back one of the most powerful military forces in the world. And though they never fired a single shot, their deception became one of the most decisive battles of the war. Yet as they rolled up the last of the rubber tanks and the wind carried away the echoes of their false engines, one thought haunted every man among them. If the enemy ever discovered the truth, the ghosts would vanish, and with them the fragile hope they'd fought to protect. When the guns finally fell silent and the smoke over Europe began to fade, the world celebrated its victory. Cities cheered, bells rang, and soldiers returned home to parades and medals. But for the men of the Ghost Army, there was no celebration, only silence. Their war had been fought in shadows, and even in victory those shadows remained. They could not tell their families what they had done, nor could they ever speak of the part they played in D-Day's success. Their operation was classified, buried beneath layers of military secrecy so deep that it would remain hidden for nearly 50 years. When they came home, they were told only this: "You will never talk about what you did." And so, they didn't. Many went back to their old lives, painters returning to their studios, designers back to advertising, sound engineers to Hollywood. But inside, they carried the memories of a war fought not with bullets or blood, but with art and illusion. They remembered the long nights painting tank shadows onto canvas, the fear when German planes buzzed overhead, and the strange pride that came from knowing their lies had saved lives. For decades, history forgot them. Their mission, Operation Fortitude and the work of the Ghost Army, remained sealed. Even among veterans, their story was dismissed as rumor. Some who had fought alongside them never realized the tanks beside their camps were filled with nothing but air. But slowly, fragments of their story began to surface. Declassified documents revealed that their deception had fooled not only Hitler's generals, but the entire German high command. The false radio traffic, the dummy vehicles, the sound stage of war they had built, all had been instrumental in convincing the enemy that Normandy was merely a diversion. Intelligence reports estimated that their efforts saved tens of thousands of Allied lives by keeping German reinforcements pinned at Calais long after the real invasion had begun. The Ghost Army had done what few believed possible. They had fought a war without killing. Their weapons were imagination, courage, and deception, and they had turned those into instruments of survival. Still, the men who had built that phantom army carried a complicated pride. Some struggled with guilt, knowing others had died while they fought from the safety of illusion. Others wondered if their contribution would ever be remembered at all. "We were artists," one veteran later said, "but we painted with lies." Years later, as historians uncovered the truth, the world finally began to understand the scale of their achievement. Photos emerged of rubber tanks towering over soldiers like balloons, of fake airfields that looked eerily alive, of men who had risked their lives to convince the enemy of a ghost story. Interviews with surviving members revealed humor, fear, and humility, the quiet satisfaction of knowing that their creativity had changed history. One radio operator, now an old man, recalled the night he sent fake transmissions into the dark sky, pretending to command an entire division. "I remember thinking," he said softly, "somewhere out there real boys are fighting. And maybe, if I make this sound convincing enough, a few of them might live to see morning." That was the essence of the Ghost Army's war. Invisible, unsung, but profoundly human. They had built an illusion so fragile it could have collapsed with a single misplaced shadow. Yet so powerful, it shaped the course of the world's greatest conflict. When their secret was finally declassified decades later, journalists and historians began to piece together the truth. The men who had once been forbidden to speak could finally share their stories. And as they did, the world discovered a new kind of hero, one who fought not through destruction, but through creation. Their legacy was not written in blood, but in imagination. They showed that in the darkest hours of war, courage could take many forms, even the form of a brushstroke, a sound recording, or a carefully crafted lie. They were soldiers of deception, artists of survival, shadows that saved lives. And though history nearly forgot them, their ghosts still whisper through the pages of time, a quiet reminder that sometimes the greatest victories are the ones no one ever sees. For decades, the Ghost Army's story lay buried beneath classified seals and forgotten archives, a secret too strange to believe, too vital to risk revealing. But history, like truth, has a way of resurfacing. When documents were finally declassified in the 1990s, historians stumbled upon something that sounded more like a movie script than a military report. A phantom army, inflatable tanks, sound trucks, and Hollywood trickery that fooled the Nazis and changed the course of World War II. What they uncovered was not just a clever ruse, but a masterpiece of creativity under fire. The Ghost Army was proof that imagination could be a weapon, that art could save lives. Historians, journalists, and filmmakers began piecing together the incredible operation, interviewing the surviving members who, now old and grey, finally broke their silence. They spoke with quiet pride, their memories still sharp, the hiss of air inflating rubber tanks, the careful brushstrokes painting fake shadows, the tension of keeping up a lie that millions depended on. In 2013, after nearly 70 years, the U.S. Congress honored the Ghost Army's members for their extraordinary contributions, men who had fought a war of deception, courage, and ingenuity. The world finally recognized them not as tricksters, but as heroes who had mastered the art of illusion in service of freedom. The images now stand as haunting testaments to their brilliance, vast fields of rubber tanks glistening under the English sun, fake camps alive with recorded sounds of engines and chatter, decoy landing craft bobbing in the channel's grey waves. They built ghosts, not to frighten but to protect. As the film of history plays out, their story reminds us that wars are not only won with force, but with wit, creativity, and belief. In a time when truth itself was a weapon, these men blurred the line between what was real and what was imagined. And in doing so, they helped turn the tide of history. The camera fades from black and white photos of those rubber tanks to the faces of the men who made them. The narrator's voice lowers, reflective and reverent. They built ghosts to fight monsters. And the ghosts won a pause. The music swells, faintly echoing the hum of aircraft and the whisper of wind over empty fields where those fake armies once stood. History remembers the battles, but sometimes it's the illusions that decide them, fade to black.